We're gonna rock and roll. So, my name is Dr. Olivia Lesslar. I'm a medical practitioner, and I am here to run this amazing panel of experts on harnessing light and vibration. In medicine, we have this thing where if you see one, do one, teach one, that makes you proficient. I am now a proficient facilitator because I have done one, I've seen one, and I'm going to teach one at some point. Teaching myself. Right, so you guys have all been to a couple of events now in the Dragonfly Week. Who here is new? Who is this first session? Okay, I'm going to make this special just for you.
We'll be general.
Otherwise, you know the drill. This is about community, right? And Sarah and her team have this vision whereby they want the conversation that starts here to actually be mirrored in the crowd, and then for you guys to take it outside, because this is how we're going to advance whatever it is that we're hoping to advance. Health, planetary health, community, whatever it may be. So my background is that I'm a psychoneuroimmunologist, which means that I play in that intersection between psychology, behavioral sciences, nervous system, immunology, and endocrinology. The idea behind this is that, surprise, surprise, the patient in front of me is a whole person, not broken up into the organ system bits. And that's where I have really sort of honed sort of more medical intuition and no longer relying on numbers on a page. I have since, in the last year or so, really come into learning more about light, electromagnetism, vibration, and so I'm so excited because I have some serious questions to ask as well. Right? What we're also going to do is have you guys discussing things that we're talking about here on stage. So if possible, get you to shuffle around such that you're sitting next to someone, because you're going to have to do some communication. So shuffle, shuffle. Awesome. Now, you'll have to listen closely to the conversation, because not only will you be very involved in your own groups, but at the end you'll also be given 20 seconds to share who you are. And if you're shy, we're going to lock the doors and chase you down. And one thing that you've taken away from what we're discussing here on stage as well. So, something that you're going to take outside of this room. And also, we would like for you to make sure that you're using the Dragonfly app, the Dragonfly Connect.app, I believe, because you're going to be meeting some amazing people. I know I have. And if you could, make sure that you connect with them on that app and have more fellowship outside of this room. Okay, so let's introduce the speakers. You have 1 minute according to my sheet, but I'll give you 1 minute and 10 seconds. Go.
Hi, I'm Arthur Franklin, inventor and creator of many different products in healthcare, using light, crystals, and harmonics that create coherent fields to better our world, better our people, better our earth.
Oh no, I was joking. You can keep going now.
Keep going?
Oh, if you want. You roll. You roll.
And I just have a lot of passion.
Yeah.
I'm always learning, always looking for the opportunity to be able to create more with others, because I love connection.
Yeah. Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you, Olivia. So my name is Sarah Turner, and I have an interest in red and near infrared light, particularly as it's applied to gut-brain connection. But my into this kind of world was through a slightly strange trajectory, in that I came in first through pharmaceutical science, and then I started looking at why certain drugs weren't working. And one of the reasons was the delivery system, and the delivery system in this case was a plastic inhaler. And I found that if I was grounded or not grounded, it totally influenced the amount of drug that reached certain particles in certain places in the lungs. Because fine particles deposit at different places depending actually on the charge that we hold in our bodies. So for me, that this was an introduction into how our environment and how actually charge in our body influences our general day-to-day functioning. So I retrained and became a nutritional therapist because I thought, okay, this is a way that we can actually change the body. But actually it doesn't really go far enough just to look at nutrition. So I retrained and I did neuroscience to look at this connection between what's going on in our brain and what's going on in our bodies. I moved to California and I got involved in the whole biohackers movement, and then I started looking at structured water. And actually water becomes structured in a kind of a crystalline way. It forms a lattice where you use red and near infrared light. So I initially thought, okay, I'll make a structured water product for people. But as I had neuroscience, I was thinking, well, let's cut out the middleman. Let's just charge our brains instead. And so this is where I am now. I use red and near infrared light technologies to influence brain and gut function with a focus on brain wellness.
Thank you.
I am so honored to be here. My name is Craig Goldberg, and I am one of the co-founders and president of In Harmony Interactive. We teach people how to relax using sound and vibration. You can actually see our technology. It's next door with Chuck Hyde. Noah Aon also has our technology. And we've been building this brand for the last 8 years, focused on sound and vibration and its impact on our physiology. The science of vibroacoustic therapy goes back about 45 years. And that's been my place of study, is really understanding how our bodies react to sound, vibration, and light. And crystals are obviously a big part of that as well. We have an entire science and research arm of our business so that we're focused and rooted and grounded in not just what we know to be anecdotally or what we feel intuitively, but also what we can prove by touching and seeing and repeating in a laboratory. So lots to talk about.
So I've actually known Sarah for a couple of years now. We've go to a lot of the same conferences, and I didn't know that story about the inhaler. That's really cool.
Oh.
All right, so this is a question I'm going to be asking the experts now, and then after that, you're going to be talking amongst yourselves and asking the same question, okay? So listen up. What have you seen in your personal or professional experience that just blew your mind when it came to your modality, in your case, crystals?
That's a good question. I think the most interesting thing that I've seen was we took the crystal fiber technology and we turned it into blankets, and then those blankets, time after time after time, working with a midwife and multiple midwives, where crying babies just stop crying.
Oh.
Just wrap them in the blanket and they're absorbing that far infrared crystalline energy, and baby just relaxes.
Wow. Sarah?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of very interesting stories where people have had recoveries just using red and near infrared light. I think maybe I'll highlight my most recent case study because it's fresh in my mind. I have a guy who's got ALS, we call it motor neuron. And he's in a chair, he's doing good, you know, he's kind of active in his community, but very disabled in what he can do physically. And he came to me and asked for a device, and so I gave him a device. It's really just red and near infrared light. He's not really changing anything else. And, you know, he's messaging me, oh, I think I'm losing some of the spasticity in my hands and feet. Then he's messaging me, do you know what, I think I can put my feet flat on the ground now, to the point where actually he can stand up for the first time in like 4.5 years. I mean, I'm documenting all this. I have a university in England that's kind of interested. I have the Motor Neuron Society interested. But for me, this was pretty incredible because I'm already sold on the idea. I've already been on trials where I've seen people with Parkinson's kind of reverse their symptoms. But this was the first time I'd kind of had a relationship with the person.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty amazing.
Wow. Great.
This is actually what lights me up. So just about every single day I get a text message from somebody who's using our tech for some type of breakthrough that I can't mention because we're recording it and the FDA would come down on me because it's not proven yet and I have to substantiate these claims. But there are stories after story after story about how our technology, which, look, it's all of these technologies, crystals as a technology, the human body as a technology, red and infrared light as a technology. It's all about relaxation. Every single one of us in this room are overly stimulated. We're all walking around in a sympathetic nervous system response, whether you know it or not, you're doing something to mitigate it. That's the difference, and many of us probably are. But sound and vibration at the end of the day and light helps to reset the nervous system, whether the stress is physical, emotional, nutritional, mental, relational. Name a kind of stress, the body only has one response to that. Increased cortisol, increased adrenaline, fight or flight. So in this overstimulated world where even our thoughts can put us into that stimulation, we need to do something to mitigate it, to shake it off, as we talked about in the last panel, which was amazing. Sound and vibration helps us to do that. And then you can be more powerful. When the body's at rest, the body performs the way it was so beautifully designed to perform. It's that simple. We're designed to be in parasympathetic most of the day. And I think one of the things that we all share is helping humans get back to parasympathetic. Technology is great. Going outside and getting sunlight, getting your feet in the dirt is way better.
Yeah.
And to your point on the last panel, and look, I own a technology company. It's what we do. And I'm the first one to tell you there's 10 things you can do that are free, that don't involve buying technology, that can help reset the nervous system. And we're not doing it. Everything that we talk about, with the exception of crystals, is really just a mimic for what's naturally and abundantly available to us, but we've created this society that's no longer going after it and getting the things that we need to perform the way we're supposed to perform.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So that means that you're now going to huddle in your groups of 3 or 4, and I'd love for you to share your experiences with the expert in the chair next to you, where you have seen light or vibration or crystals have some sort of healing effect that you can't explain, but you've seen it. So anecdotes, right? And I know that you said you can't talk about some of the things because of FDA. But do you know what another word for an anecdote is? If it's written up and it goes into a peer-reviewed journal, it's called a case study.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
Please huddle and chat. You've got about 7 minutes. All right. So now we're going to do a round robin discussion. We're going to go through, ask some questions, the questions that the experts are answering. You guys do as well. So we're going to have a few more of these little group discussions. Feel free to change things up, move around as well. Get on the floor, whatever you want, whatever makes you feel good. And we actually had a sound bath here, completely not planned, of course. And I wound up lying on stage. So that's my future.
Perfect.
Question.
It's got resonance.
Observational. How do you interpret the role of light, vibration, energy, pick one, in addressing deeply held blockages in the body? So you can talk about the science, or you can talk about the energy. Take this however you feel.
Okay. I'd like to start off by asking everybody what the thought that goes through your mind when you're standing out in the sunlight and you're looking down and the sun's behind you. What do you notice? What's in front of you?
Shadow.
Glitter of the ground.
The shadow? So that's actually really interesting, isn't it? So our body is blocking light, right? It works the same way on the inside. So I would go as far to say that we're really a vehicle that's experiencing more and more light in our bodies. So blockages are where there's resistance, kind of like a little rave party going on somewhere in the body. And so the light brings and sheds more shadow, but through that shadowing process becomes more aware. There's more awareness that deepens. When you take a small granule substance and you get it down to its to a micro level, like this particular shape is the subatomic structure of an embryo, right? And that shape is at the most minute particle called a particulate. What is a particulate? Particulate is information. It's divine source information that's there and is there for you to access at any time within inside of you. So that's a form of light. It's a form of wave or patterning that runs through the body, and ideally, if you're doing that through your heart, your answers come pretty fast. So it's a form of light that is instilled in you, that's innate within you, that's the, let's call it the divine spark that's messaging you, kind of sending you an email. Did you get the email? So
You've got mail.
that's a simple version, and I'm excited to hear what the rest of the panelists are saying.
Thank you, that's
That's
great.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to come at it at a slightly less esoteric way, because I'm thinking about light in terms of almost like a nutrient that we need. So I think about the way that we're living, we've already talked about, as modern humans, we've kind of totally changed the way that we interact with light. You know, we're no longer sleeping on the ground, we're no longer really seeing sunrise and sunset, we're seeing a lot of artificial light. So I think if we could maybe as much as possible go back to a way that we're interacting with light in a more natural way, so seeing sunrise. If you're seeing sunrise, you're getting long wave red light, that sets off a whole cascade of not only hormone reactions, but triggers for various things that the cell's doing, there's genes switching on and off. Then, you know, we're seeing blue light in the middle of the day. Again, as mammals, we have very specific switches that are going on. We're doing certain things. Our brains want to forage for food. We want to find a mate. We want to do all the things that busy mammals should be doing in the day. And then again, at sunset, we're getting long wave red light again. It's telling our bodies it's time to heal and regenerate. So I think anything that's going on, whether we're talking about emotional blockages or just being able to think straight, unless we're kind of aligned to that circadian biology, it's very difficult to have a healthy emotional life or to really get to the root cause of what's going on, have an awareness even. So, you know, from a purely evolutionary biology point of view, that's the way that I think about integrating these light technologies, or maybe just adjusting our ambient lighting or sitting next to a desk in Vegas, you know, whatever we're doing, to try and maximize this kind of natural rhythm that we already have. And the more we align with it, the more we're able to deal with anything that's going on emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually.
That's awesome. So for me, vibration is one of the biggest ways that we actually shake things off. It's how we actually deal with blockages and break patterns in the body. And you can do that the more natural way of going for a run, rebounding, jumping up and down, getting on a Harley, getting on a horse, like we were just talking about. Like, there's lots of different ways that humans historically used to shape their bodies on a regular basis. It resets the nervous system, it brings you back to parasympathetic. You can certainly do that by getting on our technology and listening to a music meditation. You can do that now by listening to music. You can go to a concert. Whatever music you listen to, go to Red Rocks any night of the week. Get as close to those speakers as you can, and you're shaking trauma out of the body. You're shaking blockages out of the body. It helps that you're jumping up and down and probably dancing to music that you love. Whatever that looks like, your music moves you. And it's one of the things that, look, I'm a club kid from New York at the end of the day. I love jumping up and down. I'll do it all night long until the sun comes up. I go to Burning Man now to get that fix and to do that. And sunrise sets are where it's all at. But we don't watch enough sunrises. We don't catch that. As you were saying that, I was thinking of the blackout shades that I have in my bedroom. I get to sleep through sunrise now. I have a 4.5-year-old. I don't really sleep through it, but I do stay in the dark during it. Except this morning, I was outside on my balcony at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, wondering why I can't sleep. My circadian rhythm was waiting for the sun to rise. I was up because I was excited to be here and connect and support and serve. But the reality is, my circadian rhythm, I'm in red light from sunset until sunrise. I'm wearing blue blocking glasses. I'm doing a lot of the things that help me to mimic how we used to live. And that's really what these technologies are all about. I'm wearing crystals, I travel with crystals, I'm using these things on a regular basis to help really me to get back to that natural biorhythm. And it's all about blockages and breaking those patterns. It's all about revisiting those traumatic experiences that we have. I have a 4.5-year-old, and all I think about is the work that I do and not making life traumatic for her. But how do you do that when she's like, can I have a cookie? And I'm like, well, you should have dinner first. Traumatic experience. Right? Like, can I have ice cream? Why can't I have ice cream? And I'm like, because it's sugar. I mean, we can have a deeper conversation around that, but like, no. Like, all I want to do is be like, fuck yeah, of course you can have, you know, but you can't do that. That translates into a traumatic experience. So I don't believe any of us, as fantastic as our upbringing was, get out of childhood without traumatic experiences, without work to do when we get older, without blockages and limiting beliefs for us to deal with. And all of these different technologies, I think, play really nicely in helping us to rid ourselves of those blockages and revisit those traumatic experiences through a new lens and reframe them.
These sheets that were given to me, I'm finding them difficult to connect with everyone when I'm trying to follow her. So, fuck it.
You're doing great.
So, yeah. Right. So actually, the one thing that I wanted to ask when I first was even given this panel to facilitate is, why is light, vibration, and crystals in the same panel? So could you give us some insight, your understanding? I mean, this is a conversation, and then we'll go to you guys, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Take it away, Arthur.
Okay. So remember that little conversation I just had a moment ago regarding particulates?
Yep.
So I had the great opportunity to hang out in the UK with Dr. Fritz Popp back in 2002, who was the German researcher that discovered photonic light. And our conversation kind of went like this. Well, what is photonic light? Well, it's a signaling transmitter, and it creates a wave, and that's how. And I stopped right in the middle of the conversation with him. I said, is that kind of like two ships in the middle of the night when they're using Morse code when they don't have radio systems? It's the same thing. So our cells are communicating from one cell to the other using flashes of light, Morse coding to each other. And crystals are set up the same way. They have a color, codex, a frequency, and they also have a mineral content. And those mineral contents have a certain frequency that gives off photonic light, which gets transmitted through the plasma. Now, I don't know how many of you understand plasma, but it's like micronizing lightning, okay? So it's transmitting light electrically, what they call piezoelectric. So that's my simple version of how crystals and light operate very similarly through the plasma field.
Cool. Thank you. I also met Pop, really interesting guy. I was there when he was doing stuff on biophotonic emission, which is what you're talking about. Which, and I think the way that it interacts is that it's all to do with structure and order. And especially in biology, we see these ordered structures, which the body has these crystalline structures within it. And for example, anything with this kind of a benzene ring or an aromatic, like a ring structure, will oscillate with different wavelengths of light to a certain degree. So anything in the body, all these things we call a chromophore, which just means a molecule that's accepting light. It has a color. It has a color because it's accepting and reflecting light, to your point. We're not only receiving light when we see the sun or when we use these devices, we're emitting light too. But they operate on the structure of the molecule. And these molecules tend to be these crystalline structure molecules. And in fact, when we think about how water interacts with light, water actually will change its structure to become a crystalline structure if you have light next to a hydrophilic surface, like a cell membrane. So in order for us to understand how light is working in the body, we need to understand how these crystalline structures work, how when we have a lattice, we form it's almost like a highway, it's like a different way of transmission of light and electromagnetic fields.
Right.
So it's hugely important in biology to understand the crystalline structure in the body, including the fascia, including these chromophores, including the water that surrounds all our proteins. So it's totally relevant.
Yep, fabulous.
How much time do we have?
Well, you've got about 3 or 4 minutes. So.
Perfect. Okay. So there's like an 8-hour conversation answering this question easily that any one of us could stand up here and have. So I'm just like, okay, you just covered that. All right, you just covered that. So look, at the end of the day, everything is vibration. Everything. Even light, electromagnetic energy, crystals, everything that you see in this 3-dimensional world is vibrating. It's hard to think. The chair that I'm sitting on, the fantastic wood that's right here, this gorgeous carpet, at an atomic structure and a quantum level, it's vibrating. To give that really a simple explanation, it's like 7th grade chemistry, protons, neutrons, and electrons, and now obviously the quantum field, which quanta goes even smaller, particles, all of it. It's all vibrating. So vibration, for me, is literally connected to any conversation that you want, because we are vibrating beings. We're energetic beings. That energy is vibrating. So all of it for me is a vibration. And we all know when we're at a low vibration. We all know when we're feeling depression, anxiety. We all know when somebody next to us is feeling that. I lived in New York City for 10 years.
So
getting on the subway, oh, forget about it, right? People would just start talking to me on the subway because I'm an open vessel and I love to talk to people. And people would literally just dump their world and then turn to me and be like, I've never told anybody that before. And it'd be like sometimes glorious, sometimes horrific. And I would just sit there and listen and put up my shields and let everything flow through me. And then I'd go
And
ground.
use your stop.
Right? I'd be like, Control-Alt-Delete, that didn't happen. Like, go get help. Here's where you need to go. No, but like, we're all energetic beings. And just interacting, it's one of the reasons why I love so much of the interaction that's happening here. Just being in the aura and the auric field of those around us that are here is helping your vibration to climb and helping yourself to accelerate and to drop into that community, which is a big vibe from everything that we're talking about here.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's a lot.
Yeah. No, I have more clarity about this panel, to be honest with you. So thank you very much. Now, if you could go back into your groups or find a new group or bring more new people in, I'd love for you to talk to each other about what you've gleaned from what we've been talking about up here on stage. Because light, but vibration and crystals, I mean, these are some of the things that we kind of usually think of as woo, right? But it's not. It's very biophysical. It's very quantum medicine, very quantum biology, which are all like the buzzwords now, but it's science, bitches. So come together and let's have a bit of a chat.
It's tip of the sphere stuff. This is really at the tip of the sphere of science and research right now.
Right, 100%.
It's really fun.
You've got about 6 minutes or so, okay. So there were a couple of things that I wanted to latch onto now, only because I'm sure you guys are interested too. But photonics, biophotonics, cells emitting light, what magic, what witchcraft are you talking about, Arthur?
Yeah.
Witchcraft. Warlock? No.
Yeah.
Well, it's a signaling system, right? As I mentioned earlier. So that, from the research that Fritz Popp came out with, he said there's roughly about 10 particles per cell of photons. Now, that number could certainly increase by, 25 years ago of research. But ultimately, it's a signaling platform. Each cell, I'm sure everybody here, or mostly everybody here, knows that the more radiant the cell, it creates an electric hue, right? Like a vibrational auric field around each of the cells. And so when the cell's strong and the communication is good, there's more light going on. Now, I don't think there's anybody in this room that can't acknowledge when a woman has just fallen in love. I mean, she's radiating beacons of light in space. I mean, it's obvious. People turn around and go, wow. That's just a lot of photons firing an enormous amount of photonic light. So I would say that's a pretty realistic demonstration. But on the cellular level, I'd like to take it for just a moment. When I did a little experiment in front of about 500 school teachers, I said, let's take the platonic solids and handed them all out a sheet of platonic solids, and they traced with crayons or color pens around these platonic solids, and then we turned on Beethoven and we cranked it up. And they took that back to their classrooms, and we found that most of these kids were going up an entire grade in 5 weeks. So how does that translate? I'd say it translates from a place in an internal mechanism which turns the photonic light on, which accelerates the consciousness and magnifies that within the body.
Thank you. Sarah, I know you do quite a bit in biophotons, I mean, with the chromophores and stuff. Could you tell us a little bit more about biophotons in your work?
Yes, so this concept, you're right, Fritz Albert Popp did a lot of work, but also other people have done, like Go Witches did a lot of work, and so it's kind of been a little bit on the fringe, but now I'm starting to go to like mainstream scientific conferences where people are starting to look at exactly what does it mean that it is specifically the mitochondria, mainly that are emitting ultra-weak photonics, and usually in the UV range. So also, this is interesting because if you stimulate the mitochondria, even with red light, they start emitting UV light. So again, we're seeing like a way that potentially the cells are communicating. Potentially the neurons, or even like the very small microfibers within the brain and within cells could be acting as waveguides to direct this photonic light. It's very difficult to measure. You need very sophisticated equipment. You need something that multiplies these photons hugely in order to even see anything at all. So it's really not something that's widely studied. But we do know that our mitochondria are emitting reactive oxygen species, which could be one of the ways that they are producing this photonic energy. So this could be a distress signal, for example, because we know that these reactive oxygen species are often produced when the cell is stressed. So there is energy now to look at how does this relate to the cells signaling to maybe the mitochondria, which have their own DNA, signaling to the cellular DNA that there's some stress condition. And maybe they do it in a light form because it's a much quicker form of transmission, especially when you consider that the body does have these kind of almost like liquid crystalline proteins which could potentially conduct light faster than a nerve can, for example, conduct a signal. So it could be like a secondary signal acting at a different scale in the body to a nervous signal. So I think that's really where the science is going, is people are going to start to look at, okay, is biophotonic emission transmission and communication on a different scale to our normal way of thinking about nervous transmission. So yes, it's hugely interesting, but like I say, it's difficult to study because the kit is so specialised.
Wow. What do you say after that? All right. So in my last kind of, the answer to my last question, I said that everything's vibration. You are quite literally a being of light. I know that that's the woo-woo thing of like, you're a light being and that's awesome. But this three-dimensional world is quite literally built on light as a communication source. All the way down to the mitochondria of your body, but every cell in your body as well is communicating through light, emitting light. We know ourselves to have these five senses, and these five senses are how our nervous system interprets the world around us. It's completely perceptive. My wife and I can walk into the same room, look at the same experience, walk out and have seen completely different things because of her perception of what's happening in that room and my perception of what's happening in that room. And that is simply how my five senses are perceiving that room. The ancient Egyptians thought that we had close to 360 different senses, let alone five that we study now. So when you say that this is really at the tip of the spear and where the science is going, I mean, it's quite literally where all of the science and the research is going as we get more and more sophisticated instruments that we can look on a smaller and smaller scale and discover more about what's already happening behind us, that each and every one of you already know because you're a human being having a human experience. I'm a psychonaut. I've been dealing with psychedelics since I was 13 years old. I'm 45. I can tell you how many experiences I've had with light that I can't explain to you, that I can't measure on any equipment, but I can tell you things that I've seen in places that I've gone in an instant, in this lifetime, in previous lifetimes, on different dimensions and all the different things. But we're just now starting to be able to explain this using sound and vibration, using light, using crystals, and the tools that we're able to now measure and the biomarkers that we're now able to look at. It's really remarkable.
And that's it. It's the modern assays, the modernity and technology that is allowing us to be able to explain some of these things which up until now were unexplainable, woo, new age bullshit, right? Now, I do some work with, I'm on the board to the Dean of Medicine at the National University of Singapore, and one of the things that they're doing there is optogenetic research. In this particular lab, what we do is that in people who've had breast cancer and they've had their breast removed, you're able to put in a silicon implant that actually has a particular type of gel in it, such that when you irradiate it using a particular wavelength of light from outside, and you give chemotherapy at the same time, it activates the chemotherapy. That's something that's actively being studied. So all this, I think that we're moving into this next phase of medicine, wellness, and health, where there's more convergence, no more of this divergence, right? And in your lives, and going back into your groups, I'm just wondering if you have had experiences such that you've seen modern assays, modern doctors, modern practitioners talking about ancient modalities and then now accepting it to be true, to be fact. I'm sure you have. All right, you've got 7 minutes or so. Welcome back. All right, I have a question that I wanted to ask, and it was about orgonite pyramids. Could you, if you guys know it, could you explain what it looks like if you haven't seen an orgonite pyramid? And then give me some insights into it, please, because they're very pretty, but what does it do?
I've been building my own version of it for about 20 years. So the orgonite pyramid itself is from Wilhelm Reich. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Back in the 40s, and it basically brings a coherent field into a space, and it's maybe a crude way of saying this, it's a smog buster, energetic smog buster.
For those who don't know what an orgonite pyramid is, what does it look like?
So it's usually done with a resin or some sort of poly resin, and there is some crystals, some different particles or small pieces of metal, aluminum, copper. Some people put more high-end precious metals in it. It builds a very measurable field. You can actually measure the field depending on the size and how they're built. And I've seen a lot of things come from it, and I can share more.
Share.
Sure.
That's what we're here for.
So I've put them in the ground, and I've doused out around root systems where trees are dying and green shoots come out within usually 2 or 3 months, if not sooner. We've used them in houses where you have those huge transformer buckets, electrical buckets within 100 feet of the house. People get headaches, smart meters, all that kind of what I call dirty electricity kind of transmissions. And this pulls that static, the good ones pull that static energy in, reconstitute it with those energetics, and then send it out through the plasma field into your given space and creates a common effect of like negative ions, that kind of thing.
Okay. Do you guys know or understand? Yeah, I'd love to hear more, because I know as the
Should we jump out of order?
Yeah.
Dare we jump out of order?
Because I understand that as the resin is setting, you're actually putting pressure on the crystal, is that right? And it's a vibration.
So it's that composite resin. Is that orgonite, Kyle?
This is art crystal.
Art crystal, all right. So you'll see it walking around. I have a necklace, I have an orgonite pyramid that sits. When I'm creating content in my home office, I'm sitting in front of 6 screens for 8 hours. There's orgonite, there's shungite, there's all sorts of different things that help to harmonize. I think the easiest way to explain it without getting down into the weeds is it harmonizes the electromagnetic signals that we're being presented with all day long. Your body is basically a big antenna. You're coming into and out of what's called harmonic resonance with all the frequencies that you're presented with every single day. And as I said before, you're either doing something to mitigate that, or you're victim to whatever sound and frequency you're being presented with all day long. Here in the United States, the electricity is humming at a 60 hertz frequency. The easiest way to explain that in a relative way is if you're working in your kitchen and you don't have anything else on and you hear the condenser come on for your refrigerator. I used to have an older refrigerator, it's humming at 60 hertz. Your body's coming into harmonic resonance with 60 hertz. There's a lot of science and research that says 10 hertz is a better vibration for the human body to be in parasympathetic. Orgonite helps to mitigate that harmful is really the wrong word, but it helps to harmonize the energy that's flowing towards the body and whatever is sitting within arm's reach, if you will, of that orgonite. Makes great jewelry.
Yeah.
Not a pyramid, I suppose. Bad for hugs if you're wearing a pyramid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything to add?
Well, it's interesting that we're talking about Wilhelm Reich because it's not someone who I thought we'd be talking about on the panel. And I actually have a podcast called Rebel Scientist, but this guy really is what I would call a rebel scientist. So if you don't know about his work, you should read it because the guy is a trip. I mean, really, there's really some interesting research. And really why I'm interested is because this concept of orgone energy that this comes from, I kind of relate it to this biophotonic energy that we're talking about. And I actually wonder whether it's the same thing, just expressed in different terminology. But the stuff that he was doing, actually, his story is quite wild. He was actually, all of his books were burnt at one point. You know, the CIA were after him. He's countlessly fled different areas. And he had these, he called them sex boxes. You maybe know more about this.
Now we're getting into the meat of it.
Right?
It was
Go
a
on
sex
then.
box, but basically it's a box that you went in to strengthen sexual energy, because his whole thing was that as a society we were incredibly sexually repressed, and if you can release this energy, it's the most cathartic thing. So we put people in these sex boxes, but they were like small, dark boxes where you generated this energy. So, you know, it's a small, dark box, which makes me wonder whether it's concentrating this biophotonic emission. They called it orgone energy. So whether orgone energy is the same as biophotonic energy, there's definitely a similarity. But it's very interesting because it's kind of going to that same place that you have this other energy form that's allowing certain communication in the body. So yeah, I have read up a lot. He did all kinds of things. He did cloud busting, a really very interesting technology, but it was discredited deliberately, certainly in the US.
It always is, right?
But this was very, you know, this was taken to the point where he was arrested, his books were burned. I think he spent several years in prison. But yeah, very interesting, and potentially this whole, I don't know so much about the blocks, I've seen them, but I understand they have copper in them too, because that's also circulating this orgone energy. So
Amazon.com, black box.
Yeah, his book is called
I don't think you're going to find that on Amazon.
What is it? What's Adventures?
Adventures in the Sexmatron or something. Really. Orgasmatron, that's what it's called. Adventures in the Orgasmatron. And his book is called Adventures. They made a film about him called Adventures of the Orgasm, I think. But anyway.
Okay, be very careful how you Google, okay, after this, please.
Highlight of the event, I'm sure, just happened.
I think you have some more to say.
Oh, I just wanted to add that the orgone energy is very similar to the blue hues that are around the cell as well.
Yes.
So it's creating this blue electric energy. I mean, same thing astronauts see from space, right? That same energy. So I agree with you. I think there's a high potential that it has. It's biophotonic.
Yeah.
Is this why they're called blue films?
Yeah,
Never
maybe.
mind. Okay, blue movies. Yeah. All right, so they're kind of going to get fired from this
That's
job.
a district.
Right. So what we're going to do now is, I think we've got time for 2, 3, 4 questions. Does anybody have a question? Yeah, there we go. Greg, could you give her your mic?
Sure.
Get on. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of your knowledge. Super interesting. I just have a question. You mentioned that you could measure the field, and I was just curious what you use to measure that.
Well, there's several different ways you can do it more crudely by setting up a wire system in a proximity of a certain mathematical distance, and then you can run electricity in that space by using some of the EMF readers, and you can get kind of a crude way of measuring it. It's not, we don't have real sophisticated technology to do it, but it's a crude version, and it will literally, you can even bring in a light bulb, like a fluorescent bulb, and you can
turn on.
actually measure that through the lighting of that bulb, so you can actually measure the field that way.
Interesting. I saw somebody once using those. They're like brass things.
Dowsing rods.
Yeah, as well. I'm just curious other methods. Thank you.
Anybody else with a
You can
question?
pass it around. We've got
Yeah,
plenty of
that's
mics up here. I'll add to that. So I'll just add to that real quick. You can buy an EMF detector. I mean, like, you can pick up on these different fields. You can even buy an electron spectrometer. I mean, we have more and more. Go Jeff Bezos and Amazon. Like, there's more stuff that we have available to us in the consumer markets today. That, look, some of the stuff is pretty pricey. It can be upwards of $1,500, $2,000, $2,500. Ignore the man washing the windows, or it's all part of it to stay focused in the test. So there's just so much that we have available. You should see my Amazon cart of like what's saved, of what to buy. I'm just waiting for it to come down in price, because every year it does come down in price more and more and more. It's really awesome. Before you even get to a lab.
Yes, I've seen some studies that are talking about the resonance of the heart having something like 5,000 times the amplitude of the brain and these magnetic frequencies. Are there any practices or any technology that you're aware of that helps to clear that field in a meaningful way?
Sure. Does anybody know what the highest vibration is from a thought perspective? So there's an entire process where they actually outline this. Authenticity. We used to think for the longest time love was the highest vibration, and then authenticity came above it. Think about it. Who knows if you're being authentic or not? Only you. You're the only person that knows if what you just, I just got chills. If you're actually being authentic in how you're showing up and how you're living your life and the decisions you're making. The highest vibration that you can hold is authenticity. And that is a singular relationship that you have with yourself. So practice being authentic. Recognize when you're not being authentic. Recognize when you're pleasing others. Look, we're social organisms. For years, until the recent past, we lived in villages up to 150 people. Getting ostracized from the village was a death sentence. And you got ostracized when you weren't being socially conforming to whatever was happening in that particular tribe. So that's still we get a lot of social anxiety around acceptance and conformity and being accepted by those around us. So I would tell you one of the biggest things that you can do is to be authentic with yourself. A gratitude practice, a journal, mantras, there's tons of different things that you can do. Our technologies, light therapy, exposure to sun, grounding. I mean, there's like umpteen things that you can do to help that. But I think the biggest and most important is the relationship that we foster with ourselves and being authentic in who we are. Whatever that is. You might be a dick. That's cool. Be a dick. That's your authentic self. And if that's what shines through, you're in alignment, go shine. Right? Like, it's different for all of us. Doesn't mean you're going to be nice to everybody. Doesn't mean you're going to take care of everybody. That just might be who you are and how you've incarnated this lifetime to learn those lessons, and that's great. I have other words that were coming in mind. That was the cleanest word that I could use. But like, that might be who, not you are, but like each individual, we're all different. So being your authentic self, whatever that looks like, and being in alignment with that is going to help you to thrive the most and vibrate the highest in this world.
Are there certain crystals that? Oh, sorry. You
Well, I was just going to say I used to do workshops for a company called Heart Math.
Yes.
I don't know if you've heard of Heart
Yes.
Math, but they do some brilliant tools for getting your brain and your heart into coherence. And very simple visualization, breath work. Actually, I've not kept up with it, but it was a very simple screen on a display where you could buy your intention and breathing, change the colours on a display, and if you carried on that practice, you were able to better get into heart and brain coherence. So that's an excellent resource.
It's like the most frustrating thing to me. Huh?
frustrating?
Yeah.
Dispenza?
No.
That's Dr. Joe Dispenza, the heart
Oh,
medicine.
Spencer,
No,
yeah.
it's not.
No, it's not.
No,
It's
Joe
center
Dispenza.
point.
It's not. It's Ronnie McCraty.
Yeah.
And his team near Santa Cruz in California. They have a whole thing there. And the lady was asking, how do you measure fields? They've got trees all measuring. They're measuring interactions of humans with plants, humans with humans.
Dommenheimer.
They're doing some fabulous research. But yeah, it's Ronnie McCraty who leads that company.
Are there actually some crystals that can increase your toroidal field or actually decrease the toroidal field? Like that energetic field from the heart?
Well, I don't really focus on the decreasing.
Sorry.
Positive outlook.
But yeah, I mean, if you put yourself right next to crystal, I don't know if anybody's seen what Mercury looks like in crystal form. It actually look like pyramids, and they're deep ruby red. But you don't touch them. I mean, they're very, very, very toxic. And are kind of like kryptonite to the body.
Yeah.
And you can put them right near the heart, and you can actually, over a period of time, can actually create heart palpitations from it. But go ahead.
No, after you, please. Continue that thought.
No, I thought maybe you had something.
It's interesting. I actually have a question for you. So I love crystals. I'm wearing crystals. There's crystals all over my house. I love crystals. But I hear the most recent science and research that I've heard is that we're actually destroying the polarity, if you will, or the energetic field of the planet Earth in moving all of these crystals, by mining these crystals and moving them from these giant geodes into our homes. I have a crystal grid around my house, which I laid with intention and set up very specifically as I blessed my home and created an energetic field around my home. And as I was doing that, I was thinking about how these crystals were once in a mine somewhere in the planet Earth. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we're moving them, but ultimately we are that.
Yeah.
Those minerals are in our bodies as well, and so when we move them into a space, if there's an honoring that takes place, you couldn't make crystals happier. You know, you're creating a really fun party for them. When we create our crystal blankets, we do that same thing. We go through several prayer processes, and we communicate with the crystals that this is a real thing we're doing to help people, animals, earth, agriculture, all of that. And the harmony of it is very authentic. So, yeah, I think it's actually a good thing as long as they're honored and respected. I think that's the thing. And many of the crystals come in, they're very traumatized because they weren't done with more consciousness when they were mined. So there's a process that you can do with that, just like what you're talking about, using harmonics and prayers and chanting and other things that, like crystals are a living energetic. They're affected just as we are.
Yeah, beautiful.
There's a joke in there somewhere about kidney stones, but anyway, we've got time for one more question. Does anybody have? Yeah, go on then, mate.
I got one. Earlier you talked about the gentleman who had ALS. I'm sorry. And I'm curious, just exposure to light. Do you believe that also could just be placebo? That he is exposed to this and then now is activated, believes in it, and he just is able to heal himself?
Well, the placebo effect is a real
Massive.
effect, and it's a very powerful effect. So, if you're looking at one single case study, anecdotal, subjective evidence, you can't rule out the placebo effect, for sure. So perhaps. But what is the placebo effect? Really, what is that? We really don't actually know what that is yet. We are these dynamic, oscillating, vibrational fields interacting with other vibrational fields. We've already brought it down to that level. What is the placebo effect in all of that? We don't know. Is it some kind of interaction with all these fields and light's a part of it? But no, to your point, no, I don't know if that wasn't placebo. Could have been. It's just interesting that he subjectively reported that he thought it was the light. That's all I'm saying. I'm kind of not making any kind of claim that the light is having that direct.
Yeah, Mr. FDA, stand down.
It wasn't just picking on you in general too, like all of your fields. Do you feel that sometimes just giving somebody a crystal, that might give them a placebo effect, where they're just like, oh, I feel so much better now.
Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
You're right.
Yeah.
Your mind is as powerful as all of the supercomputers on this planet, and we're just learning about consciousness and the power of mind and thought. Dr. Joe is very legit and has seen, and look, every time he has a retreat, which luckily is now once a month, we sell more cushions. Because people find me after the retreat and they're like, I'm going to meditate every morning from 4:30 to 6:30. If you do that, you will change your biology, you will change your physiology, you will change the way you show up for others, you will change everything about you, whether that's a disease state or a positive state. Actually, I had an idea for something called the placebo hotel, which is a horrific, we can't do this. You just can't do this. But everybody was in on it.
Experimentation on humans is illegal.
No, we can't do this. But I just want to, The whole concept was everybody knew that it was a placebo except the person that was going in there for the care. And as far as they were concerned, this was the foremost place for this research, and we have this miraculous pill that 100% of the time has healed 100% of the people. And everybody there is in on it, except like I said, you can't do this. But the placebo hotel, I would profess that it would have remarkable results with zero medicine.
So actually, Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist, had a book called Veronica Decides to Die, and that's what happened. She tried to commit suicide, and then she was put into a psychiatric hospital, and she was having these, she was told that she'd done irreparable damage to her heart, and she was going to die. And then she decided to live. She had an impetus. She wanted to survive, right? Turns out they were actually giving her a pill to bring on these pains or whatever, and they wanted her to find that will to live.
Yes.
And she lived.
Right.
Veronica Decides to Die.
I mean, so maybe we can do this. Any investors out there interested in starting the placebo hotel?
I just wanted to thank all the experts on stage, Craig, Sarah, Arthur, and of course the audience who have been so participatory and engaged, and I have so much gratitude, because obviously how the energy we have up here is reflective of the energy that you have down there. And I just wanted to say lastly that the placebo effect is the single biggest piece of evidence that healing starts in the mind. Mm-hmm. So thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. That was awesome.